Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching.
Move faster, dog. The whip came alive before it landed. A thin, rising hiss, like air torn down the middle. Then the crack, wet at the end of it, where the leather bit through skin. Viktor Raines went down onto one knee. The crate slid from the top of his head and hit the floor, corner first, and did not break. He stayed there a moment, bent, breathing through his nose. Old man. Long gray hair matted to his neck, beard to his chest, ribs stacked visible under the skin. Too lean. But the muscle was still there, roped along the back and shoulders, moving as he breathed. A body kept, not a body left. He did not make a sound. The Halfern guard clicked, a fast, wet rattle of the mandibles that passed for laughter among its kind. Two others took it up. They stood too straight, too still between movements, the way the Halfern always did, limbs folded at hard angles, compound eyes throwing back the corridor light in flat, wet sheets. When they moved together, without looking, each knowing where the others were. Up, the first one said. The translator collar at its throat flattened the word into something toneless. Up, up. Viktor put a hand flat on the floor, pushed, rose. He lifted the crate, set it back on the crown of his head, one hand steadying it, and started walking again, as though nothing had interrupted him. Behind him, he left small, dark coins of blood, one for every few steps, a neat trail across the deck plate. The guards did not follow. They never followed the dog far. There was nowhere in the black site for him to go. They called him dog because it was the cruelest thing they had. In the Halfern tongue, the word was not the four-legged animal humans kept. It was the other thing, the thing in the walls, the thing that got into the grain, the small filth that bred and spread and had to be burned out. Vermin. They had 100 prisoners of a dozen species in that place, and they saved the word for the human. It pleased them to use it. It pleased them more that he never answered to it. The deposit was a long, cold room stacked to the ceiling, shelf over shelf, the great pantry of the site. Viktor carried the crate down the center aisle and set it on the low shelf where the ration cargo went, squared it with the others, and stepped back. Then he stood, waiting for the next order, hands loose at his sides, eyes on nothing. SITH'TAL watched him from the end of the aisle. The Velsha was small, barely to the human's chest, narrow through the shoulders, his skin a pale dove gray that moved with faint color when he felt things, the way water moves when something passes under it. Right now it moved with distress. He had seen the blood before he saw the man. He always did. "You are hurt," SITH'TAL said. His voice was soft. Everything about him was soft. It was why he was still alive. The Halfern did not fear the Velsha, did not hate them, barely saw them. After enough decades, even the cruel stop bothering with the harmless. They had given SITH'TAL the food rooms to keep and forgotten him there, which was the kindest thing they had ever done to anyone. Viktor said nothing. He looked at the shelves. SITH'TAL came closer, color rippling gray to a faint bruised blue along his arms. He reached under his tunic and brought out a small clay dish, the paste inside it dark and greasy. He had made it himself from things the Halfern would never miss, rendered fat and the bruised leaves of a silver herb that grew wild along the grow beds, torn out by the kitchen crews as a weed. Crushed into the paste, it smelled sharp and clean and stopped bleeding quickly, helping torn skin close faster than it should. "For your back," SITH'TAL said. He held it up with both hands, the way his people offered things. "Later, when they are not watching." Viktor looked down at the dish. Then at the Velsha holding it. He took it. His hand nearly covered both of SITH'TAL's. "You'll get thrown in the hole for this," he said. His voice was low and level, and did not sound like it had been used much. "They do not watch the food," SITH'TAL said. Something moved in his face that on a human would have been a smile. "They watch you." The color along SITH'TAL's arms had settled just from having Viktor near. He did not know how to tell the human that these few moments with him were the only part of his day he did not dread, or that he still did not understand why a creature capable of so much violence had never shown any of it to him. So he said something easier instead. "There is food for the officer in Ward 4. He set a covered tray on the crate Viktor had brought. "It must go now, or they will say you were slow." A pause. The blue came back, faint at his throat. "Take the long corridor. The short one has the new director's people today." Viktor tucked the clay dish inside his shirt, against his chest, out of sight. He picked up the tray. For a moment he stood there with it, looking at the small gray creature who kept finding new ways to keep him alive, and something crossed the flat quiet of his face. There and gone, too fast to name. "Thank you," he said. Then he turned and carried the officer's meal out into the corridor, and the door closed, and SITH'TAL stood alone among the shelves, with his hand still half raised in the shape of the thing he had given away. He wished he could do more. He had no idea how to help the only person who had ever helped him. At Dragonborn Station, the briefing room had no windows and did not need them. One wall was a slab of dark glass, and on it turned a slow gray model of a place with no name of its own. A Halfern deep sight, built into the flank of an airless moon, all hard angles and buried levels, the way the Halfern built everything. The other species had a name for it, the Forever Grounded. Nobody who went in came out under their own power. For a people who lived among the stars, there was no worse thing to call a place. Captain Lee Crane stood with his arms folded and looked at it and said nothing for a while. "You've read the file," MacArthur said. "I've read the file." "Then you know the man." "I know the man." Crane's jaw worked once. That's the problem. MacArthur said nothing. He was 60 and had aged the way certain officers did, pared down to wire and command, with nothing soft left on him. He had sent a great many men to a great many places, and he did not insult the ones worth keeping by rushing them. On the glass, the record hung open beside the site. Viktor Raines at 40, hard-eyed, the photo taken the day they offered him amnesty, a last attempt to bring a long-standing problem quietly back into the fold. He had refused, and gone on doing what he was already doing, and never looked back. Most of the page was blacked out, great bars of redaction line after line, but what showed through was enough. Reclamation wars, sabotage, irregular actions behind friendly lines, a casualty list attached that ran long enough to scroll. Human names, alien names. He had not been particular. "He killed our people," Crane said. "A lot of them. Then he refused amnesty and ran, and the Halforn did us the favor of catching him." He turned from the glass. "And now I'm supposed to put 4 of my best through the rings of that place to hand him his life back." "You are?" "I don't like it. I didn't ask you to like it. No edge in it. Just fact." Crane looked at the old man a moment longer. Then something in him let it go, not because he was ordered to, but because of who was doing the ordering. "No," Crane said. "You didn't." He looked back at the model. "You've had 100 missions you could have spent us on. You never have. If you're spending us on this one, then this one matters." He let a breath go. "I don't need to like the cargo to carry it." MacArthur inclined his head, the closest thing he gave to thanks. "What's he for?" Crane said. "Not pushing." just so the old man knew he'd noticed the shape of the hole where the answer should be. Project Grey Dawn. MacArthur said it the way you'd set a sealed box on a table. That's all of it you're cleared for, and it's more than most would get. Leave the rest to me. The name meant nothing to Crane. That was how names like that were built. Empty on purpose, so a man could carry one out of a room, and it would tell no one anything, not even the man carrying it. He didn't reach for what was inside it. If MacArthur was keeping the lid stayed on. That was the deal between them, and it was years old, and it had never once gone bad. Crane studied the site instead, counted the defensive rings without being told to. 3, then a 4th, buried deep, the kind you only built around something you were afraid of. They fortified him, he said. 6 years ago, yes. MacArthur almost smiled. Since then, their intelligence has him broken. Old, worked half to death, no threat left in him. They've let the guard down. They use him for labor now. They do not watch him like what he was. He nodded at the 4th ring, then killed it off the glass. They forgot what they were holding. That's the only edge you get. Don't waste it. And what is he now? Crane said. 6 years in that place. Is he the man in the file, or is he what they think he is? That, MacArthur said. You'll learn when you open the cell, same as them. He shut the glass down. The gray sight vanished, the record with it, the long black bars of everything Crane wasn't cleared to know going dark all at once. 10 hours, Captain. Get your men on the boat. Crane came to attention, real this time. Not habit, and went to the hatch. There he paused, one hand on the frame. If he's still the man in the file, he said, he's not going to thank us for the ride. No, MacArthur said. I don't imagine he thanks anyone for anything. The hatch sealed behind him. The dropship ran dark and cold toward the moon, and the 5 of them rode it the way men ride toward something they respect. They called the ship the Kettle, because it never got warm, and somebody had to make a joke of it. Crane sat forward, helmet in his lap, watching the black. Behind him his men filled the hold with the small, easy noise of people who had done this together enough times to stop pretending it was nothing. Roger was checking the breaching charges for the 3rd time, big hand slow and certain. He was the one who carried the heavy work, and he did not talk much, and when he did, the others listened. 3rd time okay, said Rusinoff, upside down in his seat harness for reasons known only to him. They gonna love you the same on the 1st count. Charges don't care if you love them, Roger said. They care if you count them. He counts them so you don't have to think about where we're going, said Devlin. Low, not looking up from the edge he was putting on a knife that was already sharp. Devlin was the quiet one, the one who noticed things. Which is smart, because look where we're going. That landed the way he meant it to. For a moment, nobody said anything. Say the name, Rusanov said, righting himself. Come on. Somebody say it so it stops sitting there. The Forever Grounded, said the last of them. Salazar, youngest, hands too still on his rifle. He'd said it quiet, like a man testing ice. The other species won't even fly cargo past that moon. There's a stretch of nothing around it on every chart. Nobody goes near it. Because nobody comes back off it, Roger said. Not unkindly. Just true. We do, Crane said without turning around. He said it flatly, with the kind of certainty that needed nothing added to it. The hold settled. Rusanov stopped clowning. They were his, and he'd said the only thing that mattered. It was enough. Devlin sheathed the knife. So who's the package? He said. Real answer. Not the file answer. Crane was quiet a moment. Human. Name's Raines. Fought against us in the Reclamation Wars, and kept fighting after, once they offered amnesty, and he told them where to put it. Wasn't captured for years after that. He didn't quit. Home turned its back on him a long time before the Halforn ever got their hands on him. So he's the enemy, Salazar said slowly. He was. And we're bleeding for him. We're bleeding for the man who sent us, Crane said. That's a different thing, and it's enough. Salazar looked at that and took it, the way you take something from a man you trust to have looked at it harder than you. Here's the part that'll turn your stomach, Crane went on. The Halforn. When they took him and nobody came, no exchange, no ransom, nothing. His own people glad to be rid of him. They threw a celebration. Because in their way of thinking, the worst thing that can happen to a living thing is to be cast off by its own. To them, that means you've got no value left. A thing with no value ought to have the decency to be dead already. He finally turned and looked back at them. That's why they work him like an animal. Not because he's an enemy, because his own kind didn't want him. In their heads, he stopped counting as a person the day nobody came. Rusinov wasn't smiling anymore. And now somebody's coming. Now somebody's coming, Crane said. The kettle shuddered. Not turbulence. There was no air out here to make turbulence. It was the moon, the mass of it swinging up under them, and on the far side of it the sight coming into scan, ring inside ring inside ring, and buried under all of it a heat the instruments didn't like. The pilot's voice came back flat. "Captain, they've lit up. Whole outer face just came awake." Crane put his helmet on, and without a word, the noise of 5 friends gave way to the silence of 5 weapons. "Then they know we're coming," he said. "Good. Save us knocking." The kettle dropped toward the Forever Grounded, and the dark came up to meet it. The kettle didn't land. It hit. The pilot drove her nose first into the outer dock and blew the ramp before the hull stopped screaming. Then they were out, 5 shapes into a storm of light, boots on Halforn deck, and the war started all at once. Fire came from everywhere and nowhere. The Halforn didn't shoot from cover. They shot from position. Each gun set exactly where a gun should be. Fields of fire crossed clean. A killing geometry laid down without a wasted angle. It was beautiful. It was textbook. Move through, Crane's voice, flat in the helmet. They moved through. Rusinov took a firing slit with a burst and a curse. Devlin put 2 rounds into something that came clicking out of a wall recess, and it folded at angles a body shouldn't have. Salazar was breathing too fast on the channel, and still putting his rounds where they belonged. A Halforn rose in front of Crane, tall, mandibles wide, gun swinging to track. Crane was already inside its arc. He put the muzzle under the jointed chin and fired up, and kept walking before it dropped. They took the first ring in under a minute. It cost them a piece of Salazar's shoulder, and all of the quiet they'd flown in with. "They're fast," Salazar hissed, teeth tight, while Roger slapped a seal on the wound. "They're fast where they expect you," Devlin said. He was watching a bulkhead, head tilted. "Look how they set up. Every gun aimed at where the door is. Nobody aimed at the wall." "So we stopped using doors," Crane said. "They blew the wall." The charge took out a section of bulkhead the Halforn had left thin, because no one was supposed to come through it, and the Marines went into the second ring from a direction that didn't exist on any of the enemy's careful diagrams. For 3 seconds, the defenders kept firing at the door. 3 seconds was a long time. The Halforn on that side died, still pointed the wrong way. They went down. Down through the levels, into the gut of the place, where the Forever Grounded showed them what it was. The cells ran in stacked tiers along a central shaft, and the things inside them pressed against the barriers as the fighting passed. 100 shapes, 12 species, eyes and stalks, and things that were neither, all watching the humans go by with the same terrible hope. None of them called out. They had learned in this place what happened to things that made noise. "God," Salazar said once. "Don't look," Crane told him. "Look, and you'll want to open every one. We can't. Look at my back." The Halfern adapted. That was the thing about them. Give them a pattern, and they mastered it fast. Bulkheads began slamming ahead of the Marines, sealing routes, funneling them. The lights in whole corridors died on command to blind them. A pressure door dropped behind Rusanov and nearly cut him in half. Devlin dragged him through by the harness with an inch to spare. "They're hurting us," Crane said. "Then they know where we're going," Devlin said. "Good. Saves us finding it." They let themselves be herded. One corridor, then broke the pattern hard. Doubling back through a maintenance run, Roger tore open with his hands, and a grav jack, while the others held the mouth of it. The Halfern massed at the place the pattern said the humans would be. The humans weren't there. By the time the enemy reformed, the Marines were 2 levels below them, and moving. It cost. It all cost. Rusanov was limping. Salazar's arm was bad. They were burning through charges and time, and the margin a man carries that tells him he's going to live. But they reached the detention block, and they found the cell. The others had blast doors, heavy plating, warnings stenciled in Halfern script. His had all of that, and more locks than any of the rest, and a viewing slit reinforced twice over. They'd built a vault for one old man. Crane looked through the slit. Viktor Raines sat against the far wall, wrists loose over his knees, watching the doors the way a man watches weather. The gunfire, the screaming metal, the war coming apart 2 feet from his face. None of it had moved him. He'd heard them coming for a while now. He'd simply waited to see what came through. Roger set the charge. "Clear." The door blew inward and hung sideways on one ruined hinge. The Marines came in hard, guns up, and found the old man exactly where he'd been. Not flinched, not risen. Up close, he was nothing like the file. The man in that photo had been 40 and whole. This one was gray, bearded, ribs stacked under the skin, marked all over with the long-healed and never-healed things the Halfern had left on him. 6 years had done to him what 6 years in that place did to anyone. But the eyes were wrong for a broken man. The eyes were clear and cold, and already counting them. "Viktor Raines," Crane said. "Captain Lee Crane, Terran Marine Corps. We're here to take you home." Viktor looked at each of them in turn. The wounded shoulder. The limp. The charges. The blood that wasn't theirs. And the blood that was. "You lost people getting down here," he said. His voice was low, unused. "How many still breathing topside?" "Enough to carry you." Carry. Something moved at the corner of the old man's mouth that was not a smile. "On your feet. This place is coming down around us, and we are not staying to watch." Viktor didn't move. Outside, deep in the walls, something new woke up. A lower sound than the rest, felt in the deck before it was heard. The buried heart of the place opening its eyes. Devlin heard it. "Captain, that's the Corps Guard. They're bringing up the real ones." Crane didn't take his eyes off the prisoner. "Raines. Now." Viktor Raines put his head back against the wall of the cell they'd built just for him, and looked up at the men his own kind had finally sent, 6 years too late, and gave them his answer. "No," he said. Crane stared at him. "No," Viktor said again. "I'm not leaving." Behind them, the corridor strobed with muzzle flash, Roger and Devlin holding the breach, and here was this old man on the floor of his cell, saying no, like a man declining a second helping. "We crossed half of Orion for you," Crane said. "I put my men through 4 rings of this place for you, and you're going to sit there and be difficult. I didn't ask for a rescue. Captain! Devlin from the door. Company. They came up the block fast, a Halfern squad that clean crossed geometry, guns swinging to the cell mouth in perfect time. The Marines met them. It was short, and it was loud. Roger broke their formation with a grenade, and Devlin and Rusanov cut down what the blast left standing, and in a handful of seconds, the corridor was theirs again, and full of smoke and folded gray bodies. Through all of it, Viktor sat against the wall and did not so much as turn his head, like it was weather, like it had nothing to do with him. That was what did it. Crane crossed the cell in 2 strides, reached down, got a fistful of the old man's collar. On your feet. I am not dying in this hole for a man who won't. He never finished. Viktor moved. Nobody saw all of it. One instant the old man was slack in Crane's grip. The next, he had turned inside it, and his hand had gone to Crane's own boot and come up. And then Crane was very still because the edge of his own knife was laid against the side of his throat. The Marine's weapon snapped around as one. 4 barrels on the old man. Viktor didn't look at them. He looked at Crane, close, the blade steady, his breathing not even quick. You could die here, Captain, he said. Quiet. No heat in it at all. Right here, in the dark, for whatever they told you I'm worth. Go back where you came from. For a long second, nobody moved. Salazar's finger was inside the guard. Roger had gone very quiet and focused, the way he got before something bad. Weapons down, Crane said. Nobody moved. Down. I said down. Do not fire. They lowered. Not all the way. Barrels off the old man, hands still tight. Viktor held Crane's eyes another moment. Then he took the blade away from the captain's throat, but he did not give it back. He turned it once in his hand, feeling the weight of it, and let it hang low at his side like something that had found its owner, like the whole thing had been a demonstration and not a killing that didn't happen. MacArthur said you wouldn't come easy. Crane straightened. He rubbed the side of his neck where the cold line of it had rested, and let out a breath through his teeth. He looked at the knife in the old man's fist. He didn't ask for it back. Viktor looked up at him. I'll be honest with you, Raines. I hate this mission. I don't think you're worth one of them out there. Never mind all of them. But I'm not leaving you in a Halfern cell. So for God's sake, let's get out of this pit, and you and I can settle it later. Who? Viktor said. What? Who sent you? General Douglas MacArthur. Crane was already turning to the door, already moving on. Dragonborn station, out of Orion. He wants you home, and I don't ask him why. And Viktor Raines went still. Not his face. His face didn't change. It was only that his head turned a few degrees, slow and settled, and his eyes came up and rested on Crane's face and stayed there a half-second too long, the way a man looks at something to be sure of it. Then, down the block, the deep sound came again. The buried thing. Boots and worse, a lot of them, rising up through the levels toward the cell they'd built the vault around. Viktor stood up. He did it without effort, the way the young do, and it was wrong on a body that worn. He crossed to the nearest folded halforn and took its weapon out of its claws and checked it with hands that already knew the shape of it. You want out, he said, and it was not a question, and it was the first time he'd said anything like yes. Then stay behind me and do what I do. This place only kills you if you're where they expect. We've been managing that fine, Rusanov said. Viktor looked at him. You've been fighting your way through the outer rings. You haven't met what's coming up those stairs. He moved to the door. I have. 6 years of it. They followed him. There wasn't a decision in it, not really. He simply went, and he moved like he owned the dark. And following him was the thing that kept them breathing, and they all felt it at once. He did not fight like them. He fought like the place was a machine, and he knew every lever. He took them not toward the wide route they'd fought down, but into the arteries behind it. A maintenance crawl, a dead sub-level, a chase of pipes, and cable the Halforn kept out of their own patrol pattern, because nothing was supposed to move there. When a squad crossed ahead, Viktor didn't engage. He killed a power junction instead, and a blast door the Halforn were relying on slammed the wrong way and cut their own reinforcement in half, and the humans went through the gap while the enemy was still trying to understand what had broken. They talk to each other constant, Viktor said, moving, low. Every one of them knows where every other one is. Take that away, and they're blind. He fired twice around a corner without looking, from memory of the angle, and 2 Halforn dropped. Cut their eyes, cut their doors. Make the building lie to them. Devlin, who read patterns for a living, watched him work and said nothing, and the nothing was full of respect and a little of something colder. They came into a wide maintenance gallery, machinery to the ceiling, and a Halforn element was waiting. This time set right, guns on every entrance, someone among them finally thinking. Fire came in hard. Rusinov took a hit to the thigh and went down, cursing. Roger dragged him behind a housing. "Pinned," Crane called. "Raines!" Viktor was already gone sideways, into the machines. What happened next, the Marines only heard. A wet, mechanical roar, a gout of superheated coolant venting into the enemy's careful position from a valve that shouldn't have been able to open. The Halforn came apart from it, not shot, cooked, the beautiful geometry dissolving into a scramble of dying things. And Viktor walked out of the machines, into the middle of it, and finished the one still moving. He did not leave any of them able to crawl for help. He went to each one. It was fast, and it was thorough, and it was very quiet. Salazar watched him do it, watched him put down the wounded with the same economy he'd used on the whole. When Viktor came back, the young Marine's face was doing something it hadn't done in the outer rings, where the killing had at least been a fight. Viktor saw it, didn't care or didn't show it. "They'd have done the same to a wounded man of yours," he said, passing. "The difference is they'd have taken their time. They got Rusinov up. He could limp. It would have to do." Crane looked at the old man, at what they'd pulled out of the vault, the thing the Halforn had been so afraid of that they'd redacted him and buried him and celebrated the day his own people threw him away. The file had lied by half, not a broken relic, not a stubborn old man. A weapon that had been sitting in a cell for 6 years, patient, waiting to see if a reason to move would ever come through the door. And a name had been the thing that moved it. "How far to the surface?" Crane said. Viktor looked up. "The way you look up through rock you've measured 1,000 times in your head." "Far," he said. "The bad part's still between us and the sky." He started moving. "And they know now. They know what they're fighting. From here up, every meter costs." Down in the deep of the forever grounded, the Corps Guard came fully awake and began, methodically, to close every door between the humans and the stars. SITH'TAL carried the director's tray back through the low corridors with both hands, the way his people carried everything, and did not spill a drop. The director ate 3 times a day and left his ruin for others. Bones sucked clean, the shells of things, the sticky lacquer of burdened sauce dried to the plate. SITH'TAL collected it because it was his to collect, and because the walk from the officer's level to the kitchen was the longest stretch of the day when no one struck him. He had made a kind of peace with the walk. It was almost quiet. Then the alarm began. Not the work horn, not the count bell. This was the other one, the deep repeating pulse that ran in the walls, the one he had heard only twice in all his decades here, both times followed by things he did not let himself remember. The lights along the corridor shifted to a hard red. Guards came through at a run. They did not slow for him. They never did. He was furniture. He was less than the vermin they cursed. But they clicked to one another as they passed, fast and high, the register they used when they were afraid, and SITH'TAL, who had spent a lifetime learning to hear what the Halfern did not mean to say, caught the pieces as they went. Breach. The outer rings. Losses. And then the word that stopped his feet on the stone. Humans. He stood very still in the red light with the director's tray in his hands. Humans had come. Into the forever grounded, where nothing came. And there was only one human in all of this place, the one they worked like an animal, the one they had celebrated catching because his own kind had thrown him away, the one they called dog because it was the cruelest thing they had. They had come for Viktor. The color moved under SITH'TAL's skin, gray to a fast, frightened blue, faster than he could still it. He understood, the way he understood most things, from the side and all at once. He knew the Halfern. He had watched them for longer than the human had been alive. He knew what they did when something was taken from them, how a people who believed that a cast-off thing had no worth, that an abandoned thing should have the decency to be dead, would answer the sight of someone crossing the stars to reclaim their dog. They would not let him be reclaimed. It would break something in them to allow it. They would kill him first, out of spite, to prove they had been right all along. SITH'TAL set the director's tray down on the stone, carefully. He did not spill it, even now. Then he turned away from the kitchen, away from the one safe room in the world where they forgot he existed, and went down into the red corridors toward the fighting, toward the only person who had ever said no on his behalf. He did not know how he would help. He only knew that he could not stand among the shelves and wish one more time that he could do more. Higher up, the humans were bleeding for every step. Viktor took them through the throat of the place, and the place fought back. The core guard was not the outer rings. These Halfern did not break as easily when the pattern broke. Someone above them had learned and adapted, and now the doors came down in sequence, and the fire came from angles that made sense. The old man still turned the building against itself where he could. A junction here, a vent there. But the levers were fewer this high, and the enemy was closing everyone behind them. Rusanov's leg was worse. Roger carried half his weight now. Salazar had stopped talking on the channel, which was its own kind of bad. "Choke point ahead," Viktor said. Low, flat. "One way through. They know it too." "Then we go through it," Crane said. "Then we go through it," Viktor agreed, and did not slow. They came around the turn hard, weapons up, expecting guns. They found something else. 3 Halferns stood in the red light of a junction hall. 2 held weapons, half raised, not quite ready, caught in the middle of something that had nothing to do with the war. The 3rd held no gun. It held, instead, a small gray shape off the ground by the scruff of its meager clothes, feet kicking at nothing, the way you might lift a child by the back of its shirt to look at it before you were cruel to it. Viktor stopped. For the first time since the cell, the old man stopped moving. The small gray thing turned its head and saw him, and its whole body changed. A ripple of color, gray to something warmer, hope and horror at once. And it did not cry for help. It did the opposite. It found his eyes across the hall, and it spent the last of its strength trying to send him away. "Run," SITH'TAL said, his soft voice barely carried. "Viktor, run." The Halfern holding him made its wet, clicking laugh, and it pressed the device in its other claw against the bare skin of the Velshaw's throat. There was a small sound, a hiss, no louder than a breath. SITH'TAL's body seized. The color under his skin flared and then drained, all of it, gray to a sick, pale nothing. The halfern opened its claw and let him drop, and he hit the stone folded around himself, both small hands pressed to his belly, and from his open mouth came a sound that no one in that hall would forget. Thin, high, endless, the sound of a body being taken apart from the inside by the thing it had spent its life afraid of. The three halfern laughed together. Viktor moved. The Marines would talk about it later, the few who talked about anything. How fast it was. How the captured halfhorn rifle came up in the old man's hands and put a round through the first gunner's eye and another through the second's throat before either had finished bringing its weapon around. 2 shots, 2 dead, placed like punctuation. And how Viktor did not stop to see them fall. How he was already crossing the hall, already inside the last one's reach, already driving it back against the wall with a knife that had been Crane's an hour ago, and how the blade went across the wet joint of the thing's throat and stayed there, sawing, until the clicking stopped for good. He pulled the knife free and let the halfern slide down the wall. He did not look at it again. He went to SITH'TAL. The little creature was still folded on the stone, still making that sound, his hands pressed to the agony in his belly, his eyes squeezed shut and then open, wild, finding Viktor's face and fixing on it. The color came back for a moment, a faint, exhausted blue, the color he turned when the human was near, the only good color in his day. Viktor knelt. He did not speak. There was nothing to say that this creature could not already read in him, and nothing this creature could say that Viktor could not already read in the ruined shape of him. The venom did not kill quickly. It killed the way his people died worst, slow and whole and awake for all of it. There were long minutes of this still to come. They both knew it. It passed between them without a word, the way everything always had. The small gray one understanding what his friend was going to do for him, and the human understanding that he had to. SITH'TAL's eyes said something like thank you. Viktor put one hand over them, gently. So the last thing the small one felt was not the red light, or the enemy, or his own body coming apart. Only the warmth of a hand, covering his eyes, the way you shield a child from a thing it should not have to see. With the other hand, he brought up the knife. He set it, and he pushed it home, into the heart. Once, clean. Time stopped in the red hall. Green welled up around the blade and ran, slow, over the small, still hands. The thin sound cut off. The little body eased, all its held pain going out of it at once, and under Viktor's palm, the seized muscles let go. A last breath left the creature, soft and long and almost nothing. A sigh, the sound his whole name had always been. And then SITH'TAL of the Velsha was gone, and the hall was quiet except for the war a long way off. Viktor knelt there a moment with his hand still over the closed eyes. "What have you done?" Rusanov's voice cracked down the middle of it. The Marine stood a few feet off, rifle slack in his hands, staring at the dead thing and the old man over it, his face open with horror. It was helpless. It was already. What have you done? Viktor drew the knife back. He wiped it once against his own ragged sleeve and stood. He looked at Rusanov. Whatever was behind his eyes did not reach his face. What he needed, Viktor said. And that was the last thing Viktor Raines said. He did not speak again. Not when Crane said his name. Not when the Corps Guard threw its last defense across the final stretch, and the humans had to fight through it shoulder to shoulder. The old man among them now, wordless, terrible, spending the halfern-like coin. Not when they blew the last door and the airless dark of the surface opened above them, and the kettle came screaming down to the dock to take them off. He fought like a man with nothing left to protect, It was worse than watching him fight for something. They dragged Rusanov aboard. They dragged themselves aboard. Viktor came last, unhurried, and took a seat against the bulkhead and set the captured rifle across his knees and looked at nothing, and the green had dried dark on the back of his hand, and he did not wipe it off. The kettle clawed up off the moon. Through the open ramp, falling away below them, the forever grounded burned in a dozen places, its careful rings broken open, its doors hanging. The place that let nothing leave, watching one human leave it at last. Nobody in the hold said a word. The old man sat with the dead thing's blood on his hand and his eyes on the middle distance, and the stars came up around the ship, and he did not speak, and he did not weep, and he did not look back. The kettle ran quiet on the way back, and the quiet came from the old man. They'd seen bad things before, all of them. They had a way of talking after, not about it exactly, but around it, the noise soldiers make to remind each other they're still there. Rusanov usually started it, but Rusanov sat with his ruined leg stretched out and his mouth shut, and the noise didn't come, because every time one of them looked up, there was Viktor Raines against the far bulkhead, the captured rifle across his knees, the dead thing's green-dried black on the back of his hand, saying nothing. "He gonna be like that the whole way," Rusanov said, low, to no one. "Leave it," Crane said. "I'm just saying. Man kills the only—" Rusanov stopped, started again, quieter. "The little one was on his side, that's all I'm saying. It was on his side and he put a knife in it." "You don't know what you saw," Roger said. "I know what I saw. You saw the shape of it." Devlin was cleaning blood off his hands with a rag, slow, not looking at anyone. "You didn't see what was inside it. There's a difference. There's always a difference." Salazar hadn't spoken either. He sat with his elbows on his knees, staring at the deck between his boots, and when he finally talked, his voice came out wrong. He covered its eyes. He looked up. "Did anybody else see it? I had the angle. I was off to the side. His back was to most of you, but I saw his hand. He put it over its eyes first, before he did it." He looked from face to face like somebody could explain it to him. "You don't cover the eyes of something you're murdering. You don't. Why would you cover its eyes?" Nobody answered him. Crane sat forward, apart from it, listening and not joining. He'd been turning it over the whole flight, and it wouldn't come clean. He'd gone in expecting a broken relic and pulled out a weapon. He'd expected a package and gotten a man who'd put a knife to his throat and then kept it, and used that same knife in the Red Hall to open a Halforn's neck, and then to still the heart of the one small creature that had looked like his only friend. Fast and cold and thorough. And then the same man had, apparently, knelt in the middle of a firefight and taken the time they didn't have to cover the dying thing's eyes with his hand. Cold justice in that. Both, in the same body, in the same minute. He didn't have a name for what Viktor Raines was. He only knew the file hadn't had one either. "We deliver him," Crane said finally. It came out flat, and it settled the hold, the way his voice did. "That's the mission. We deliver him to the general and we're done. What he is, what he did back there, that's not ours to sort. Somebody above us wanted him home. We got him home." He leaned back. "The rest is their problem." It was the right thing to say. It was a door closing on a room none of them wanted to stand in. But Salazar looked over at the old man one more time, at the green-black stain he wouldn't wash off, and thought that Crane was wrong, that it was theirs now, whether they wanted it or not, that you don't watch a thing like that and get to set it down. Viktor Raines looked at nothing and said nothing, and the stars slid by behind him all the way home. Dragonborn Station took them in without ceremony. There was medical waiting for Rusanov, and men with sidearms waiting for Viktor, and the machinery of the place closed around the recovered package the way machinery does. Efficient, incurious, already moving him along to wherever high-value things were kept. Crane walked him in himself. The three who could still walk went with him, tired and bloody, and unwilling to hand the old man off to strangers in a corridor after what he'd cost them to carry. They'd started this together. They'd finish the walk. They took him up through the station to the command level, past the checkpoints, to the general's door. It opened. The room beyond was quiet, lit low, and even by the panels in the walls, the holodisplay throwing brighter light across the general's back, routine traffic, supply figures, the 10,000 small things a general moves through in a day. The man in front of it stood with his back to the door, watching the numbers turn. Crane brought them to a halt. "General, recovery complete." His voice was steady. "This is Viktor Raines." For a moment, MacArthur didn't turn. He let the holodisplay run another breath, the way he let everything run, unhurried. A man who had stopped rushing toward things a long time ago. Then he shut it off. The bright turning light died, and the room held in the low, steady glow of the wall panels, and he turned around. His eyes went past Crane, past the three exhausted Marines, and they found the old man in the middle of them. The gray hair, the beard, the ruin 6 years had made of him. The green-black blood dried on the back of one still hand. Something crossed the general's face that none of them had ever seen there. "Welcome back, brother."
Hey there, space human. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this video. Drop a quick comment and let me know what's on your mind. Or just say hi if you prefer. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. Also, remember to check the pinned comment. Trust me, it's worth a look. Oh, and one last thing. I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here, or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.